So at this point, you're probably asking yourself, how can I make columns? How can I make some of these divs that I've learned about recently move side by side? Or for that matter, even how can I get an image and some text to be side by side? So there are a couple of methods that you can use to do this. And the first one I'm going to introduce is floating. So if you notice here, I have 3 divs and they're all side by side, which is out of their natural flow. Their natural flow is upper left-itis and one right after another. And that's because I've put a float attribute onto all of them. So I'm going to start this over. I'm going to take the float out so we can see what this looked like before I put the float in, and then we'll build it again. So here I have 3 divs. I've given this one an ID of left, this one an ID of middle, and this one an ID of right. And if we look at how I've styled them, I've just given them a width and a height and a background color. And I gave them all the same width and height, just simply for the sake of display. And this is what we call the natural order, where the first div is going to go to the top, it goes to the top left, and the next one is going to follow after it. They don't follow side by side. So when I take something and I take a div, an ID, and I float it to the left, I'm going to start with the first one. It takes it out of the natural order, and everything else thinks it's not there, and it's going to move up. So if I click over here, I still see my one that's left, but middle has disappeared, and that's because middle thinks that left is gone, so middle moved up. It's actually underneath left because it thinks it's gone, so it's taking its spot, and right thinks that there's an open space, so right moved up as well. So now let's watch what happens when I go to middle, and I float this one also to the left. And now I can see middle. So left is over here and it's floated to the left, and middle has also been taken out of its natural order and it's being floated left. But yet now, because this one is floated left, this will allow this one to come to the side instead of being underneath it, since they're both floated left. But right thinks they're gone. Hey, these guys are gone, and there's space there, so right has moved up there. So when we float right to the left, sorry, that's a little confusing, but I'm going to take the ID, the div with the ID of right, and I'm going to float it to the left. It now moves over as well. Okay, so this is a good start for how you can make 3 columns in the kind of blog layout that we've been doing. Here's an example. If I have a container, I have my header, and then I have 3 different divs, and I've given all of these the same height, and they all have their separate content in them. If we just look over here for 1 second, we can see that they've all been floated to the left. And here's a really nice advantage also to creating your columns by floating them. Let's say I'd like to see what my layout looks like if this was on the right. Well, instead of floating them all left, I'm just going to switch that all. Go back up over to here, and I'm going to change that to right. I'm just going to copy this, and I'll switch them all to float onto the right instead of to the left. And now I can see what my layout looks like if things were switched, if this one was over here instead. Okay, so this is the first intro to the idea of working with more advanced layouts and using floats to create multiple columns.